Good afternoon, everyone. This is the third part of the chapter Constitutional Design, Class 9, Subject Social Science. Student, in this part, we shall begin from page number 23 of your textbook, and our heading is the making of the Indian Constitution. So it means that in this section we will discuss about that how the process of making of the Indian Constitution is started and what were the advantages and disadvantages regarding this. So student, we can say that like South Africa, making of the Indian Constitution was also a very challenging task. Like in South Africa, we have studied that there was a suspicion, there was a distrust among the people. However, their leader from the black community made request that now black need to forgive the white, but both the community were not willing to trust each other because there was a long historical enmity between the two group, that was black and white. Similar situation existed in India because when we got independence, there was lot of problem existing, and lot of problem it was existing, like people in the newly independent country India got independence, and there was lot of expectation from the people that how our new constitution would be looking like. There was another problem that there is a bitter memory. You can say that the memory is not very good when we got independence, because along with the independence we got our country broken into two pieces, that was India and Pakistan on the religious line. Before this India and Pakistan got divided, there was a history of communal violence, especially in the decades of 1940s and 1950s, when almost 10 lakh people died and gave a traumatic experience to everyone. The citizen status, the people status got changed from subject to the citizens, and that is why making the status of the people from the subject to citizen got changed. Those people who were belonging from the diverse group, on the basis of their caste, on the basis of religion, on the basis of various other factors. So making a constitution for a diverse country, a big country, was a tough task for the framer of the constitution. Along with this, there was another problem, that when British colonial rule was about to come to an end, it was decided by the British government that the princely state will be given independence. This was done through the instrument of accession, not given in your textbook. This law was passed in the British Parliament, in which it was decided that the princely states, which were more than 500 princely states in country, they shall decide about their future, whether they want to remain in the part of India, whether they want to be the part of Pakistan, or they would like to remain independent. So now getting them into the part of India was a very tough task, uncertain task, and the more and more this was difficult, it made the framer of the Indian Constitution quite anxious about the future of the country. There was no clue to them that how our future India would be looking like. These were the challenges what made them conscious. These were the challenges about which make these were the challenges take which about which they were getting confused at how they will be making a constitution, until unless they are not knowing that what would be the political structure of our country India. Moving to our next heading on the page, that is the path of the path to the constitution. But before that, there is an activity given to you, student. The activity is speak to your grandparents or some other elders in your locality. This you can do back home within your family member, those who are old enough, and those who were probably the age group of 10 or 15 or 20 year at the time of the India's independence. They can definitely give you something about the experience. Like if 40 year 50 year ago 50 year later you will be asked about your experience during the lockdowns in what happened, you will be in a state to explain them something they must have in the memory. So ask them that whether they have any memory about India's partition or India's independence, what were their fears and hopes about the country at that time. Like at present time we are worried about that how this lockdown situation will be over, how we will be able to overcome the crisis associated. Similar situation uh, may have at that time. There could have been uncertainty, there could have been fear. So you can come, you can discuss those things, you can share, they can be sharing their experience, and that will be helpful for you. That's the activity. You can do it back home if you have the opportunity, if there are some elder members in the family. uh, Otherwise there are other sources there. Otherwise we have sources from where we used to get the cinema, the movies, in which we actually come to know that what was the experience of the people at that time when country got divided in the name of two religion, that was Hinduism and Islam. The country Pakistan came into being, and during this all period around 10 lakh people died. Now moving to our next heading, the path to the constitution. Student, we have made discussion about the challenges what existed during the time when Indian framer was supposed to make the constitution of India. But it was not only the challenges, there were certain advantages as per your book. The first advantages was that unlike South Africa, unlike South Africa means, in South Africa when constitution was about to be written down by the people, they were not clear what kind of Republic of South Africa they are willing to get. But as far as our country is concerned, there was no doubt in the mind of the framer of Indian constitution that India could not be anything less than a democratic country. So we can say that this consensus has evolved during the time of freedom struggle, during the time of our national movement, when efforts were made against the British colonial rule. There was another advantage that you have studied in class 8, the chapter national movement. You have studied that our national movement was not limited to get the country free from British colonial rule. It was also meant to bring the political and social equality. People like Bhagat Singh, who always advocated that there is no use of expecting that British are going to leave our country, and after that the exploitation of the poor people will remain continue through the landlords or the rich section of the society. So they wanted a society based on the principle of political and economic equality. Overall, we can say that during our freedom struggle, during our national movement, we made our struggle for two things. First, to get the independence from British colonial rule, and second, to establish the equality of political and economic equality. Various issues were there where the framer of Indian constitution also debated while writing down the constitution, writing down the rules and regulation for the constitution, like what kind of economic status India should adopt, whether it should be a socialist economy or capitalist economy. About this, student, we will be discussing in detail in the class 10th in the economic section. Here we need not to go into that detail. Then there was another issue, that what kind of democracy India is wanting to have, whether parliamentary democracy or presidential form of government required, or parliamentary form of government required, or there was another set of the democratic choice, like between the unitary form of the government like the Britain was, or between the federal form of government, which was an example from the United States of America at that time, or United States of Soviet Republic in front of us. So that was the matter of debate. What took place at that time. And student, we can say that even in modern time we used to debate that whether that was the right decision, whether we need to think about the other form of the democratic government. So that is debatable. At that time, 50, 70 years ago, it was debatable. Even today in the modern time, we can say it has been a debatable issue. Then it is mentioned that there is a very important issue, that our process of making of the constitution did not start all of a sudden. The process of making of constitution started in 1928 when Pandit Motilal Nehru, along with 8 members of the Indian National Congress, drafted the Constitution of India for the very first time. And why it was drafted? Because there was a challenge from the British government that if Indians are willing to get independence, do they have the ability to draft a constitution that the kind of country they are wanting, they are willing for themselves to fulfill these challenges, by accepting these challenges, Mr. Motilal Nehru drafted the constitution. In the year 1929, we all are aware through the Lahore session of the Indian National Congress Party, Indian National Congress Party changed its demand from Swaraj to complete independence. I hope there is no doubt among all of you, because in the history book in class 8th you studied that how come government changed its demand from Swaraj to complete independence after 1929. And in 1931 there was a Karachi session of Indian National Congress in which a resolution was passed, and in this resolution it was accepted that India will be that is mentioned that how independent India should look like. That was the resolution they had drafted about the things what they are likely to achieve. Like the member of the Indian National Congress were very clear that in the independent India there will be universal adult franchise. It means there will be principle of equal voting based on one person, one vote, one value concept. They were also clear that independent India will have rights and of freedom and equality. They were also clear that there will be provision for the protection of the minorities. Right to protect the minorities will be also accepted in this constitution. So various things what India wanted by writing the constitution, various things were determined well before we actually got independence. It was not all of a sudden process that we could be confused that now country is independent and what we are supposed to get. They were very clear, because this was the long exercise taking place even when the British rule existed there. Then there was another advantage. British colonial rule remained in our country for almost 190 years, or you can say roughly 2 centuries we remain under the colonial rule. And by remaining in touch with the British rule, we have learned lot of things from them. The best example is, you can say that in 1937, when the election was conducted for the Legislative Council and for other posts all across the India, the voting right was given to the people in India. However, although you can say that it was not based on the universal adult franchise, voting was limited to few people on certain criteria, but at least Indian could understand the concept of voting. Indian could understand that what are the assumptions and what are the principles required in the voting process. Then it was also that during the working of the Legislative Council, Indian could understand the role of the legislature in the making of the law. They could also understand that how different organs of the government work for the maintenance of democratic setup, where none of the organ of the government, be it legislature or executive or judiciary, is likely to dominate upon other. There was another advantage, student, that when you will read in the later part of the chapter, you will find that when the Constitution of India was made, many provisions which were made during the British time, during the British rule, it was taken in the Constitution of India by the framer of Indian Constitution, because they felt that something which was done and which during the British period and remain positive for the Indians, that need to be taken in the Constitution of India. That is why you will find that various provisions of the 1935 Government of India Act is the part of present Indian Constitution, which you can say that it was given a thought by, which you can say that it was adopted by only giving a proper thought, proper calculation that these rules were for the well-being of the Indians, so there is no harm in adopting that. Another point, another advantage was there, that when our Indian framer of Constitution, when the framer of our Indian Constitution started making the Indian Constitution, various examples they had in front of them, various constitution they had in front of them, from which they have adopted all the good features, considering what is good for our condition. They did not blindly follow anything. Make the point very clear, because sometime when I used to tell the student, they jump to the conclusion that we have just taken the things from different constitution and made our constitution. It was not like copy paste. It was not like just following whatever was looking good to them. They have given proper debate, proper discussion among themselves. They have given opportunity to have debate and discussion about the pros and cons of every particular rule and regulation taken from the other constitution. Only those rules and regulations were taken, student, which were suitable for our country. Then it was also the time when the constitution, the making of the constitution process started. We had certain examples across the world, like there was example of the there was the values and principle which were taken from the French Revolution, like liberty, equality, fraternity. You used to read in the preamble part. As I said in the previous section, that most of your NCERT textbook has the preamble of Indian Constitution. Kindly read it there. The three idea, that was liberty, equality and fraternity, we have got from the French Revolution. Similarly, from the uh, American War of Independence, we have got various examples from there, like Bill of Rights, which was accepted there. Few more things are written over here, student, that how the parliamentary form of democracy exists in Britain successfully. That also inspired Indian to accept that instead of presidential form of government, India will choose the method of parliamentary form of government. That is why our system of two set of the head of the government and head of the states are exactly like the way it exists in the Britain. Only thing is that head of the state in their country is a crown. The monarchical system exists in the Britain, but in our country, because the republic system exists, head of the state is the president of India. That's the only difference, but we will be understanding why it was adopted in the later part of the chapter, and in the coming part of your textbook, that why we have taken this particular system, getting inspiration from different part. Also, in front of the framer of the Indian Constitution, there was a great example of the making of socialist Russia, means when United States of Soviet Republic was formed, and in a span of 20 to 25 years, from 1917 to 1942, they became the another superpower, competing with the United States of America. Various provisions like political and economic, like social and economic equality, to be achieved by various means, including in the Constitution of India, was taken from their students. So that is how, student, we have completed this section. Now in the next section we will begin from the topic that is the Constituent Assembly. Thank you.